All right, thank you very much, Ben, and thanks to the folks at Data Masterminds for hosting Data Minutes here. And thanks everyone for coming out and checking this out today. My name is Andy Levy. I am the database administrator for a company called Benefit Resource in Rochester, New York. My handle on all the social media is alevyinrock. My blog is flxsql.com, Foxtrot Lima X-ray SQL.com. That's not what you're here to hear about, though. What we are here talking about today is how to run better, safer SQL Server queries from PowerShell using the dbatools module. So the problem that we're trying to solve here is we need to query SQL Server and from a PowerShell environment. We might have a CSV file we need to get loaded in. We might be calling an API. We need to put that data into the database or get data out of the database to send out to an API, or we're retrieving data from a user or sending it back to the user. But a lot of times, really almost all the time, when we're interacting with external data sources, we can't assume that that data is trustworthy. So we need to be able to safely handle that data and not expose our systems to SQL injection vulnerabilities and attacks. Now, if you're using SQL Server, usually a lot of people to start in using the SQL Server module from Microsoft because it's from Microsoft. And it has with it a function called invoke SQL command. And this function does exactly what it sounds like. It'll execute a SQL query. So a very common use case may be we're going to import data from a CSV file, then loop over that CSV file, create an insert statement like you see here on the screen, and then execute it. The trouble is we're just doing string concatenation. We're not doing any kind of checks to make sure that the data is safe and valid. And some people might say, well, I can escape the strings. I can send it through another function. Those sorts of things, you're going to miss edge cases. You're going to end up having an issue. So again, as I say down here, it seems convenient. You may potentially get some poor performance because you're not pre-compiling those queries. And most of all, it's unsafe practice. And what do I mean by unsafe? Let's take a look at some examples. So I'm going to load in my, excuse me, my SQL Server module. And I just have a couple of functions here I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to take some data here. It's just a list of two restaurants here in town, Simply Crepes and Rocky's Cafe. You notice Rocky's has an apostrophe in it. We're going to loop over that list. Then we're going to construct our string using those values for the insert statement, and then go ahead and execute that. And there we go. And we run that, and so our first query looks great, insert into establishments. Our second query looks okay at first, but then it throws out an error because of that apostrophe, that single quote there. So it's a malformed SQL query. And then when I queried the database, I only had the one record entered. So this is kind of the best case scenario because the query broke. It didn't change our database. It didn't affect our database at all. It just didn't execute properly. But that also means our data didn't get into the database. But what if somebody decides they're going to send me some data that has a little bit more malicious intent, and they craft here in the name of the restaurant? We're going to go ahead and close the string, and we're going to create a second query right here, a create table query. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before, loop over those names, and then execute the queries. And so we have our queries. It looks like they executed okay. We didn't get any errors. But notice this was actually two queries. The second one, insert into establishments, and then semicolon, and then a second query right here. And if I run another query, I see, well, we created Simply Crepes and we created Rocky, but no Rocky's Cafe. What if we look at the list of tables in our database? Well, now we've got two tables in the database. One, the establishments one, the restaurants, The second one was created by that insert statement because we injected a SQL string into the data and that got executed. It doesn't even have to be an insert statement that causes this. We can run a select query as well, as long as we're doing this string concatenation. So I have another malformed restaurant name here. It's going to do a union against system tables and then do another create table. And again, it looks like everything was fine, except while I executed my query, there's my 3 records, and then there's the list of my tables in the database. And if I query the table list again, I get now I now have 3 tables. I have this other table that just got created. This is really dangerous way to handle your input. Now we can, using ADO.NET methods, use prepared statements, and this is the preferred way to execute queries, right? We create our query with a placeholder, and then we create a parameter, and we populate the parameter with that value. This actually handles it much more safely, but it's a lot more work to do to get that all set up, especially if you're writing a quick ad hoc PowerShell script. The good news is that the dbatools module can help you out with that and can take care of a lot of that work for you. dbatools module is free, open source. It is cryptographically signed. It is hosted in the PowerShell gallery. It is scanned for malware there. It is totally safe to use. And I encourage anyone who's a data professional working with SQL Server to check it out. That's my commercial. So I'm going to do very similar to what I did previously, but I'm going to use dbatools invoke DBA query function instead. And DBA query lets you pass in a parameterized query and then a dictionary object, just name value pairs of the parameter names and the values that are going to be put into those parameters. So I've got my malformed restaurant name here, and just a little bit different. I've created my my parameterized query with just the placeholders, and then I'm going to pass in to invoke DBA query my query string, the string that is my query, and the dictionary object that is the parameters that are going to be used to execute it. So go ahead and run that, and we got no output, no error messages, nothing. Let's take a look at what went into the establishments table. Well, now we have what we had from our previous examples. In this case, now we have simply crepes. We wanted to see that. And then Rocky, apostrophe, close paren, semicolon, create table. So what happened was it took that string data and actually treated it like the real string data that we need to insert into the table. It didn't get executed. Now, our data quality team, they're going to have to go back. They're going to have to fix these things up. But at least we protected our database from the SQL injection attack. And if I look at the list of tables in the database, that table, really pwned, I think I called it, never got created. And then we can do the same thing with our select query. We're looking for establishments by name. We got Simply Crepes, and then we're going to try to do Rocky's Crepes again, Rocky's Cafe. And again, we're just setting up name value pair for those values, and then passing that into invoke DBA query. And we once again get 3 records. We get Simply Crepes 3 times. Why don't we get Rocky's Cafe or anything else like that? Because this fake table name here is different from this one here, so the names aren't going to match. That's why I only got the 3. And once again, if I look at the tables in the database, no extra table got created. So we parameterized our query. We're safely handling those strings without having to do funky string escapes or anything of that nature. And we can trust that the data that we are inserting is going to be inserted the way it was presented. Whether that data we actually wanted is another story. That's a data quality issue, not a security issue. If you'd like to know more about SQL injection, Bert Wagner created a group by session a number of years ago, and he presented that. It's recorded on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, look for Burt Wagner Group By. You should be able to find it there. My time is coming up here. These materials will be available through Data Masterminds. I believe it's going to be posted on GitHub later. If you'd like to get in touch with me, my contact info there is there. It'll also be in the materials that I send out. Levy and Rock on all the social media and flxsql.com. So I think I just used up my 10 minutes. Thank you very much for having me here, and thank you, Data Masterminds, for hosting this, and enjoy the rest of your day.